Freeform Friday. So yeah, Ace has been upgrading our stream with keyboard shortcuts and macros, and unfortunately one of them was Shift 1, which is, you know, the exclamation point, which anybody who knows me knows that I use the exclamation point a lot when I type. A lot. Like a really lot.
How much?
A lot, actually, Heather, as you well know.
No, I like you a lot.
Is that the chat?
It is.
It is. What's up with that? Why is that in the corner? The chat is in the corner of the stream.
Yes.
Oh,
It's right
it
there.
must have been the MooBot thing they did.
Okay, well,
Or is
I
that
mean,
closed captioning?
no, that's the chat. Yeah,
Oh, okay. That's where the closed captioning that I did is supposed to be.
well,
You've moved
it's-
everything, so.
well, you didn't tell me I wasn't
I
supposed
forgot
to
it
move
was there.
things.
I forgot it was there.
Hi,
That's
Megan.
okay. You can
I
just turn
mean,
that camera on.
well,
Or-
can I make it bigger so everyone can see the chat? No.
If you want. There's an overlay that will actually do that.
Okay, well, for now we're gonna turn it off, and crap.
What'd you throw?
Oh, the things that I'm supposed to be working on tonight.
Oh.
So let me pick those up off the floor. Excuse me.
Wow, that was an evil laugh I just did there.
It was.
Better when I don't hear them.
Of course, my phone died.
Wait, I can't hear the music. Is there music?
I don't think so. I have to figure that out too.
Okay. Well, I had several pieces of beach glass. Now I have fewer pieces of beach glass since I knocked them on the floor. So this Freeform Friday is going swimmingly so far.
It's pretty free.
It's pretty free. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, no idea where the other pieces went, but that's okay. So anyway, see, luckily I took a photo of them, and so I can tell what I'm missing, which is these two. That one and that one. You probably went
The
under.
two clear ones.
So anyway, Freeformless Friday, right? Seriously, it really is. Okay, so welcome to Freeform Friday, y'all. This is where I'm going to attempt to make a project on stream from start to finish. Considering how this Freeform Friday is going thus far, it's even odds as to whether I'm actually going to accomplish this or whether I am going to, have another episode of Allison Screws Up on the Internet. But, so Amy, who I think is still out there on the chat, before she moved to San Antonio like a jerk, gave us
Like a jerk.
these beautiful pieces of sea glass that I think were from Hawaii or someplace exciting like that. So there were 5 of them. I dropped them all on the floor, so now there are only 3. The other 2 are I don't know where. But so I'm going to set one of these tonight. I think I'm going to do this cool cobalt blue one. So when I was looking through my office during the snow day to find supplies to make samples for next week's classes, I found a pendant that I made a really long time ago that I really, really liked. And so I decided that I want to try and recreate that pendant for y'all tonight using one of Amy's cool pieces of beach glass. So what am I going to do? I'm going to start with some sheet silver, and I'm going to cut it, I'm going to texture it, and then I'm going to drill some holes in it and theoretically solder some prongs in, and then that is hopefully going to allow me to set my sea glass. And I realized that there was pretty much no confidence in any of that, so we'll see. We're gonna see how this goes. All right, so I'm starting with some. Oh, hi, Heather. Sorry, That was from Saturday.
I'm sure I was making a wonderful face.
You looked very serene.
Did I?
Yes, you did. You looked very serene and calm.
That's
Okay,
good.
so I've got a piece of
Doesn't sound like me.
well, you were doing a good job then of pretending to be somebody else. So I have a piece of 24 gauge sheet silver here. So I'm gonna put that on my work surface, and I'm gonna locate a marker. And I'm gonna decide what shape do I want this pendant to be. Do I want to do a rectangle? Do I want to do a teardrop?
Tough choice.
I know. I think I might just want to do a rectangle. So I'm gonna mark out. So the idea here is that I'm gonna do prongs here, 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 and here that are gonna be soldered into this metal plate, and that's what's actually gonna hold the sea glass in. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out my rectangle that I have marked using my metal shears. Corvus, not $6 craft store shears, but actual metal shears.
Which, if you can cut things with $6 craft store,
You're going to be able to cut
scissors.
anything with these. Like, seriously.
sheer cussedness, I tell you.
Alright, so now I've got my little rectangle of silver, and then I'm going to go ahead and texture my rectangle of silver. And how am I going to do that, you ask? I'm going to pound on things. That's how.
Here?
Yes, here. On this side of the stream. There will be pounding. It's happening. It's like you're about to knock down everything again. So, I'm going to use some metal stamps, and I just grabbed all of my metal stamps. So at some point I'm going to need to figure out which ones I want to use. But I'm just going to use a metal stamp to do kind of like an area texture on this. I'm going to be boring and just use this little hash mark one. So if I'm just area texturing with a metal stamp, literally I'm just going to put the stamp onto my metal and hit it with a hammer and then move it. Hit it with a hammer again. Of course, I can't actually do that on camera because my camera's too low for me to actually use my hammer. Right? Exactly. Oh Lord. All right. Megan says add a few blows for her anger issues as well. So when you're using the stamp on the metal, you just want to make sure you're pressing it firmly into the metal and you're getting a good blow with the hammer every time. And yes, this is a great project, texturing anything for when you've had a bad day, when you are, when you have people who you want to smash their face in, you can smash metal in instead. Much less inclined to, Ace is slowly backing away. You're much less inclined to, wind up in jail from smacking metal with a hammer than from smacking people with a hammer. Just saying. So I'm just hammering and kind of area texturing this with my, let's see, the camera's not tall enough, with my with my metal stamp and my hammer. Oh, well the music went away.
Yeah, it's only on the opening screen. And the main screen.
Oh, well isn't that fancy?
Unless you want it on
Not on all of them, but it would be nice to have the option to turn it on when I'm like, just working. I'm trying real hard not to drop a hammer on Heather right now. Okay, so when you hammer,
Appreciate that.
So when you hammer, you are going to generally cause your metal to bend because you are rearranging the molecular structure of your metal. So I'm going to take my rawhide mallet. I'm just going to pound that out flat. And so this is 24 gauge sheet metal. If I wanted something a little bit sturdier, I could have used 22 gauge sheet metal for this, but I think the 24 gauge is going to work just fine. So there's my textured metal. Now my edges and my corners are still a little bit on the stabby side, so this is where I'm going to grab some sandpaper and some steel wool. And I'm going to start by just sanding my edges. It's our first Friday without me and Dallas. Makes me sad.
Very sad. Nobody likes that.
Alright, and I am paying special attention to the corners to knock them down a little bit so that, again, they're not stabby. Nobody likes stabby corners. Hi, Corvus. We're gonna get you some proper metal shears, so that you don't have to go through that ever again. All right, so now I'm gonna take some fine steel wool and I'm gonna steel wool the edges of my metal. And by the time I'm done with this, this should be.
I have them in my hand right here.
Okay, Heather has your metal shears in her hand. Okay, so once you're done with the sandpaper and the steel wool, you should be able to actually run your finger along this edge without fear of murdering yourself with it. So now I'm going to take this and I want to mark where I'm going to put my prongs, and then I'm going to drill holes into which I'm going to solder my prongs. So this is a thing that, I mean, it's not cheating if it gets the job done, TallyFet. I'm definitely not going to judge anybody for using any tool that helps them accomplish their mission. So, when you're doing something like this where you're going to have a back plate and you're going to solder prongs onto it, your best bet for getting your prongs to stay is actually not just tacking them onto the surface of the metal, but actually drilling holes in the metal and soldering wire into them to make your prongs. So the first thing I'm going to do in preparation for my prongs is I'm going to put this piece of beach glass onto my metal, and I've got it a little bit. Apparently I'm just throwing everything tonight, and that is how it's going to be. There, hey look, now you can actually see it. Alright, so I'm going to put this on my piece of metal. I'm going to set it a little closer to the bottom because I'm going to put 2 holes here and here to hang it from. And I'm going to mark where I want my prongs to be. So I'm going to put one there. One there. Are you guys talking about me?
Nothing?
No.
What?
Yeah, they're totally talking about me. It's not nice.
Just said that,
I said good things.
Sweatshirt and keep my jacket on, so in case you keep throwing stuff at that.
Ace is just concerned for
For his own safety?
Yeah.
That's fair. Okay, so now I've got that marked, so that's where I'm going to drill my 4 holes for my prongs. So you want to
do exactly that.
There are things on the floor now. It's fine. It's all totally fine.
It is all totally fine.
My sheet metal, Amy, is 24 gauge. Okay, so I'm going to use a drill bit that corresponds to the size of 14 gauge wire. That's the size I'm going to solder in there for my prongs. And so I'm going to go ahead and just drill 4 holes, which once again camera is too... Should have thought this through before I decided to do this project. But anyway, I'm going to drill a hole at each of my marks. And normally I would do this on a piece of scrap wood, but I don't have any over here, so I'm just going to wind up with holes in my metal punch boxes. The way it was supposed to. Alright, so now I have 4 holes drilled in my piece of metal, so that's where my prongs are going to go. So now I'm going to grab my 14 gauge wire and I'm going to cut 4 pieces to make 4 prongs, and they don't need to be terribly long because this is my computer back alive? Well, my computer is not, my laptop is not fixed yet. It's getting there. We've made progress on the laptop, but no, I'm just back at work with my actual streaming computer since it's not, you know, snowy and icy anymore in Dallas. Okay, so 14 gauge sterling silver wire, and I'm gonna cut myself 4 pieces, each of which is just about ½ an inch long. I don't need... is Aso ready to hammer my computer?
Probably.
Probably.
No,
Not yet.
Not yet.
He's a gentle soul, evidently, except to himself. He's dislocated almost every joint there is. We keep hearing stories. Like, oh yeah, I dislocated my hip.
And pops.
Okay, so Amy asked if I can explain the purpose of the drilled holes, and I absolutely can. In just a minute. Okay, so when you're trying to put, you know, wire prongs on a back plate, you know, you're going for a right angle. You're going for, you know, an angle obviously like, you know, about like this, like that. There we go. But it's much less secure if you just kind of, you know, whack that wire down and solder it to the surface, as opposed to if you actually drill a hole and solder the wire into the hole on your back piece. It gives you a lot more security, especially when you're going to be doing something like, you know, setting prongs. A little bit, yeah. So when you're, you know, when you're going to be doing something like setting prongs, where you're gonna have to bend them and you're gonna have to put some pressure on them, it's a lot more secure to solder them into the holes rather than just popping them on the surface of the metal. So wow, that's really bright. That's extremely way too bright. Let's fix that, shall we? So now I'm gonna take my prongs that I just cut and I'm gonna solder them into the hole once I turn my exposure down so you can actually see what I'm doing. Oh, haha, that's the wrong camera. Ace is laughing at me. Oh, goodness. Hey, I'm still here. That's all I got to say. So, well, Amy, it bonds prongs to the back plate, but in a more secure fashion. Like, you could just solder them on at a right angle to the back plate, but that's a very fragile kind of joint, and so, yeah, this is gonna bond them onto the back plate in a much more sturdy fashion. Sorry. So I have to confess that before stream I was working on a project and I was like so close to the end of the project when it was time to stream. That's why I'm running so late, because I'm like not capable of stopping mid-project just to be on time. which is why I'm not on time very often. Alright, seriously, you need to focus.
Okay.
Yes, Heather and my camera both need to focus. I hate when I just like can't catch it. And everyone's like, what are you doing? See, this is a time when it would be good to have music playing.
Yeah.
So that nobody has to, you know, just watch me struggle with this.
Could do the circus music again.
I'm gonna pass on that. Thank you for the offer, though. Much appreciated. I know, right, Corvus? How are you supposed to walk away from projects just because of time? What the heck? Just because you're supposed to be somewhere or do something at a certain time.
Well, thankfully you love us enough that you did it.
Well, I did it, but I was late. And also, I really can't get my camera to focus, which is very annoying.
Well, at least I'm focused.
Well, good. So I did not get the camera to focus, but I did get the Heather to focus. So that's definitely a plus.
Nothing.
It's not nothing, but it's, you know, I would have been happier if I'd been able to get both of the things to focus. Dang it. It's not my day, y'all. It really isn't. See, I missed it again. Nope. Well, anyway. Focused or not, we are going to continue. Ha! Finally. That only took 1,000,001 years, right? Okay, so now that we actually have focus with the camera, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to solder these prongs into our back piece. And we're actually going to flip this upside down. So we're going to flip it with the textured side down. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these prongs and I'm actually going to insert them from the front to the back of my piece. And if I'd been a smart person and brought my pliers over here, that would have been awesome, but I didn't. If you have some handy, that'd be great, because my fingers are way too cold to actually do this without tools. Chain knows, yes.
Yes. No stabbing.
Thank you. No stabbing. All right,
Even
so
if I earned it. Allison says.
okay, so what I'm doing is I'm inserting, oh, that's so much easier with pliers. I'm putting the prongs into my back plate, so I'm inserting them from the textured side to the back side, and what I want is I want them to be basically flush with the back plate on the back side. And ideally, if you use the right drill bit, which I think the equivalent to a 14 gauge wire is a number 52 drill bit, you should have a nice tight fit. So notice this one prong that I put in there, it's not coming out. And that's what you want. That's going to make your life a whole lot easier if your prongs will just, you know, fit in there with tension and you don't have to worry. See, now I've got two. You have to worry about holding them in there while you're soldering. Alright, and I've got one that I must have wiggled my drill bit when I was drilling, because I've got one hole that's not fitting super tightly. So that's unfortunate, but it is what it is. So now I'm going to take my prongs. I'm going to put prong side down, and I'm going to sink this whole thing into my fire brick. And so my fire brick is a soft soldering surface, which means that I can actually push things into it and they will stay. So I can actually sink my whole thing down into my fire brick like that. So I'm going to take this prong and I'm going to press that down so that it's flush with my back plate. And then this was the hole that's a little bit too big, so I'm going to take that prong and just sink it down through that hole, and again put it flush with my back plate. So what I want here is I want all my prongs to be flush. I can sand them down. Ooh, that's not what I want. Bummer. Alright, I can sand them down afterwards, but it's easier if they're just flush to begin with. Now, what I did though is I screwed it up a bit, because now this one, that prong's in a little too far. So what I'm going to have to do when I solder is I'm going to have to press that down. Obviously not with my fingers, but with a tweezers in order to get that to solder. Okay, so I'm going to grab my torch, and I need flux cash, and I need flux, and I'm going to flux the back of this. So flux is, of course, that protectant that I put on my metal so that it doesn't oxidize. And I'm just going to flux all around where I'm going to be soldering. And then I'm going to grab some easy solder. Why am I grabbing easy solder? Because that's what my eyes lit upon first. And I'm going to cut 4 pieces of easy solder. I'm going to put 1 in each hole. And I'm going to find myself a tweezer. Alright, and I'm going to put 1. So 1 piece of solder goes at each prong. 3. Okay, and this is the one where it's not quite contacting, so I'm going to put that there, and once again I'm going to have to press that side down with the tweezers once I'm soldering. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, ideally, solder these prongs in. So you're just going to heat everything. If your solder moves, you can move it back with your tweezers. Looks like my torch needs a refill, so we'll see if this actually works. But once your flux turns clear, that means your metals reach the temperature where solder will flow. Once that happens, then you can just start focusing one at a time on each of your joints that you're trying to create. Okay, so that solder is starting to move. Yeah, okay, my torch is very, very puny, small, and weak at the moment, so we're gonna try refilling that so that we can get a little bit more flame out of that. Because this is, for this butane torch, this is actually a really big piece of metal. It's a big, solid back piece, and it's a lot of metal for this tiny little flame to try and heat. Also, this torch was apparently really empty. No wonder the flame was so puny. Alright, let's try that again. Better. Alright, so this has all gotten cold during that process of refilling my torch, so just need to heat everything up again, and hopefully this time it'll work a little bit better. I'm going to heat everything up again, and then once everything's nice and hot, I'm just going to focus, yeah, much better. I'm going to focus on each piece of solder, so see how that one balled up, and then it flowed, and it's going to get sucked, there we go, right down into the hole where I've got that prong. Alright, and then this is the one where I'm going to have to press this down. There we go. Okay, so there we go, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to carefully pry this out of my soldering board, bearing in mind that it is very, very hot because I just had a torch on it. Alright, and there we go. So that's my 4 prongs soldered into my back piece. that aside so it can cool a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit that with some steel wool to polish it up a bit. Now, I could pickle it. I'd absolutely pickle it if I had brought out the pickle pot, but I kind of want this one to have a little bit more of a rustic look to it, so I'm just going to steel wool it. I'm not actually going to pickle it, but of course I need to let it cool to the point where I can touch it without burning myself first. It's so nice to have a clock on my computer. My laptop still doesn't have a clock. It still doesn't have a taskbar. Still doesn't have a start menu.
But we got everything off.
We got everything off of it, so we can now, just like, you know, carpet bomb the whole thing back to the Stone Age. Alright, so this is my 4 prongs soldered in to my back plate, so I'm going to grab my steel wool again, and I'm just going to steel wool this to get some of the oxide off of it. And again, you can pickle this at this point, you can tumble it. There's any number of ways you can finish this, but like I said, you kind of want a bit of a distressed sort of gunmetal-y finish, so the steel wool is giving me at this point exactly what I want. Don't need to worry quite so much about the part that's going to be underneath my glass, since my glass isn't really transparent. It's more translucent, so the part that's underneath doesn't necessarily need to be polished. And again, so ideally these are soldered in nice and securely, so I don't have to worry about knocking them off with my steel wool. And then on the back, you can also steel wool that. Or if you want to even out the finish on the back, but you don't, again, you don't want to deal with pickling it, you could also take your sandpaper, which is what I'm going to do, and you could do a sanded finish on the back. And what that's going to do is it's going to kind of even out all of this splotchiness, which is basically just where the metal got oxidized from the torch and did not get oxidized because of the flux. And so you can use your sandpaper to just kind of, you know, you can see it at the edges here, start sanding that away. What grit are you? Oh, you're 1000 grit. No wonder you're not working very well. Why are you all 1000 grit? I need 320. Can you go get you some? I should have some in here.
Should and do different though.
Apparently they are. So yeah, so 320 grit is my preferred grit for things like this, and now that I finally have some of that in my hand, it's working much better. What I had grabbed a minute ago was a piece of 1000 grit, which will do the job, but it will take for effing ever. 320 is a nice grit for sanding on metal because it'll take metal off pretty quickly, without leaving like extremely intense scratch marks on your surface that you would then have to polish away. Now, if you have a sanding disc for your Dremel or your flex shaft, you also could do this with that, and it would go even faster, but you would not build up quite the bicep muscles that you build up by doing it by hand. And that's funny because I actually have no bicep muscles to speak of. Well, not in this shirt you can't. It's floofy. Okay, so this is what I've got so far with my sandpaper. And just to kind of show you the difference of how fast a power tool will do this, I'm going to go grab a sanding disc. So, sanding discs are one of my favorite power tool accessories. I mean, there are so many that are my favorite power tool accessories. It's really hard to choose, but sanding discs are pretty awesome. Sanding discs do not come in as many different grits as sandpaper does. Usually they just come in like fine, medium, and coarse, but they're so amazing. Of course, since I have my Dremel and not, or Heather's Dremel and not my flex shaft, and then I need to change my collet. For what? Stop apologizing, please.
I'm too close to Canada.
You're not close to Canada at all.
My heart.
Apparently Heather is Canadian at heart. More at 11. Okay, so I'm going to take my sanding disc and I'm going to accomplish way more in way less time than I could with my sandpaper. So see, it's taking all of that off really nicely. I use quick release sanding discs, and so eventually they croak, they release themselves from their little back plate. So I'm just gonna pop another one on there. But yeah, so the sanding disc is just going to take all that black crap off a lot faster than sanding by hand, but you will get, you know, a sanded surface, which since this is the back of my piece, I'm totally fine with. Do be aware that this will get warm when you're sanding it because friction, physics is a thing, whether you want it to be or not. This is where gloves, if you have them, are a good thing to wear. Also safety glasses, all the things that I'm not wearing, basically. Oops. Kill that sanding disc. Alright, we're going to do one more sanding disc and then it's going to be what it is. And what are these? Okay, these red ones are medium. I think the blue one that I had before might have been coarse. I promise you will only be treated to the dulcet sounds of me sanding for a very short while longer. I'm sure it's everybody's favorite sound. Pardon? You could. though you probably would want to, Ace asked if you could use the sanding disc on the edges. And the answer is yes, but you would probably want to use a fine disc instead of a medium disc. Alright, so we're going to call that good enough for stream. And I've managed to clean most of the crap off of the back of my piece there. Also, if I wanted to, now would be a good time to hallmark my piece since it is sterling. So I could put this face down on a bench block and stamp 925 on the back of it. So now we're going to go ahead and set our piece. One of the reasons that it's nice that I set this, that I weighted this a little bit towards the bottom of the piece, is it's pretty obvious to me which way is up. Now it just needs to be obvious to me which way. Where did I put my piece of glass? There it is. Okay, so it's gonna drop in there about like so. Okay, so it fits nicely in my prongs. Now comes the scary part, is I'm gonna cut my prongs. Okay, so obviously I don't need this much prong. I mean, this is like 6 times the height of my stone here. So what I want to do is I'm going to cut these off just so that I have just enough to go up and over my beach glass. And this can be scary because, you know, you've got all this wire, and if you cut it too short, you really have no choice but to start over. So don't cut it too short. But don't cut it too long either, because then it's not going to look good. It's this really horrifying catch-22 of, you know, you have to find that Goldilocks place where it's not too short but not too long. Okay, so I've got 2 cut. So you can see the, you know, the dramatic difference in height between the ones that I have cut and the ones that I haven't cut. Exactly, Megan, cut it just right. This is not one of those places where there's room for error. And then since I have the sanding disc still in my Dremel, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sand the tops of these prongs at an angle. Alright, so I'm going to do that to the top of each prong. What that angle does is it creates a nice transition from your prong to the surface of your piece that you're setting. And you could absolutely do this with a hand file if you don't have a Dremel. Alright, and then I'm going to grab my prong pusher, and I'm going to drop my glass in there one more time, and then I'm going to use my prong pusher to just bend my prongs over my glass. Cannot do this on the boxes because they push in. They don't give you enough resistance. And with the 14 gauge wire, you really have to put a little bit of, you know, English on it to get it to bend. And sometimes you can even grab, and this is always a tricky proposition, but you can grab your rawhide mallet and you can actually use it to tap down your prongs. So this is the one that I tapped with the rawhide mallet, so see how much closer I was able to get that one to the glass than the one that I just did with my hands. So percussive force it's a good thing when used in moderation. Meaning you're setting a piece of glass. Don't like wail on it because it's gonna break. But sometimes when you're dealing with something like your 14 gauge wire that's pretty stiff, you need a little bit of percussive force in order to bend your prongs down. I broke it. Once again, it's just not my night. Well, when I find that piece, I'll glue it back in. So I did, however, get it set nice, and I got it set in there nice and securely. So despite the fact that I decapitated it, it's not going anywhere. So I'll, have to do a little bit of epoxy food to get that glass in there. So once again, when using percussive force, be cautious. But see how nice I was able to get those prongs to set against my glass. So, I'm still calling this a win, despite the fact that I decapitated my piece of sea glass. The last thing I need to do is punch my 2 holes. So I definitely need to, fix all my cords, because there's, cords everywhere over here. So I'm just going to put a hole there and a hole there. And find my hole punch, which is here. So I could do this with my drill if I wanted to go to the trouble of changing the collet again, but I don't. So I'm just going to use my screw down hole punch. And I'm just going to punch 1 hole. Hole, and so then I can actually take this, and if I string it or put it on a chain, I can attach, one end of my piece to one hole and one end to the other hole and have a pretty cool little double-ended pendant. So there we go. All right, so we're gonna ignore the fact that I broke the glass, but other than that, everything pretty much turned out exactly the way I wanted it to. So once I find that piece of glass that fell on the floor, I can glue it back and I can have this fun sea glass pendant. So this method of setting will work with anything that's relatively flat. So you can do it with a cabochon of a gemstone, you can do it with a crystal cabochon. You basically just need to have a flat back so that it'll set flat up against your back plate. So anything that's like a brilliant cut stone, anything with a pavilion isn't going to work, but anything that's flat works really well with this method. So that's our Freeform Friday tutorial for today. Our somewhat decapitated beach glass pendant. Again, still pretty happy with the way that turned out. So I'm Allison from Beading Dreams in Dallas, Texas. Anybody who wants to hang around, we are going to be back in just a couple minutes, and I'm going to unbox our February shaker and spoon box while it is still the month of February, which isn't going to last for much longer. So if anybody wants to just take a brief break, we're going to be back on this channel, twitch.tv /Beading Dream, in about 5 minutes, unboxing that shaker and spoon box. So hopefully we will see some of you all then. If you're not going to hang around for the unboxing, don't worry, we'll be back on this channel, twitch.tv /Beading Dream, tomorrow night at 6 p.m. with our tribal coiled earrings tutorial. That's a very popular class. It's really fun. So tune in tomorrow night to see tribal coiled earrings at 6 p.m. followed by a live merchandise sale. But again, excuse me, we're going to be back in just 10 minutes to unbox our shaker and spoon box. So hopefully some of y'all stick around, and we'll see y'all soon.